Hello, everybody. This is Will Lyle, professional bassist in New York City, and you're watching Case for Bass. Thank you, Greg and Anthony.
I'm Anthony Githers.
And I'm Greg Weiss.
And we are the hosts of Case for Bass.
Welcome everybody back for another episode of Case for Bass, and we have a fantastic guest for this episode. We have bassist Will Lyle, and Will is an Instagram influencer. Oh yeah, big round of applause. You will love Will Lyle, and Will talks bass stories, and Will's just an elite top end player, and you can catch him on YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook, and his talent is like unprecedented for somebody his age, and his ability is just superlative. And we're going to get this interview started and pass it back to Anthony for the first question.
Thank you very much, Greg.
You're welcome.
And
all right, Will. First and foremost, I know that you're young and you started playing late, but did the bass choose you, or did you choose the bass?
That's a great question. So my first answer would be that the bass chose me, and then I had to make decisions to choose the bass myself and choose to get better and better and to like work on it. Basically, it kind of came down to this. So I started playing electric bass. I had experience on several other instruments first. When I was very small, when I was a kid, like 3 years old, I started playing cello because I saw this video of Yo-Yo Ma, and it was a concert video for kids called "Tackling the Monster." And so I saw Yo-Yo Ma playing, and I started playing cello when I was very, very little. And at that time, I was super into classical music. And my mom's family is from Austria. So there's a deep classical music tradition in Austria. We have Mozart, we have Mahler, we have tons of great composers from there, and it's part of the culture, definitely, And so I grew up, and they all play. Like my whole family on that side played something. Nobody did professional. I only had one professional musician, but anyway. So I played cello first, then piano when I was a small kid, and then my family and I lived in San Francisco until I was 10. We moved from San Francisco to Southern California, to a place south of LA called Orange County. Steve Bailey has a joke. He's like, "What's the worst part about San Diego?" And he said, "Having to drive through Orange County." So that was at that time. Orange County is much better now. And actually, there are parts of Orange County that are very culturally rich that I got to experience later on. But when I first moved there, I was bored out of my mind, and there were no cello or piano teachers.
Wow.
Well, there were especially no cello teachers, and I loved classical music. And there was one piano teacher who we stuck with for a while, but it was very rigid and not that fun. So I also started playing guitar when I was a kid.
Oh, wow.
And I was about 10 years old. My guitar teacher was also a bass player. That was the first introduction. So he was mainly a bass player, but he also taught guitar on the side. He was a fantastic bass player. He's his name is Gabe Rosales, and he is like an unbelievable slap and funk and R&B player. And he did some gigs with Jennifer Lopez and Fat Joe. Like he went the whole pop route, but he was like an incredible virtuoso. And eventually, one of the deciding factors of me choosing upright was realizing that I would never play electric bass like that. I'll keep going. So around the time I started playing guitar, I also became really interested in Latin music. And so my mom would bring me little percussion instruments because my mom had this job where the company had factories in the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico.
Oh, wow.
So she would bring me like little tiny toy percussion instruments and also like music. She'd bring me CDs. There were still CDs at that time. I still had a CD player. And it would be music from the region. And first it was reggaeton because reggaeton was like popular at that time. But then
that was a big thing at the time. Yeah.
But through that, there were a lot of artists that fused the more traditional styles like salsa and merengue and bachata with reggaeton. So then I became interested in those kinds of musics because of those CDs. So I started trying to learn that, and I taught myself percussion. I taught myself how to play conga, bongo, this Dominican instrument called the tambora. So when I was a kid, like my parents did not have a TV in the house, so the way that I would have fun was to play music. Like when I was
that intentional to not have a TV in the house?
That was intentional. Yeah.
Like all your relatives, you had to make music to be happy.
Right, exactly, and that was totally deliberate. It wasn't because of like my family was well off, like they could have afforded a TV, no problem, but they still like would not have my brother and I watch TV. So that was the way that I had fun, So then I wanted to play percussion in my jazz band at school, but there was no availability for percussion, like for like conga. There was no conga parts, and we already had 3 drummers, but there was only one other bass player, right? And there were 2 guitar players. I played guitar a little bit too, but my ability to sight read and like knowledge of how to fit in a big band, I would have done better on bass. So I was with my mom in the car one day, and she says, "Why don't you play the bass?" And I was like, "That's a terrible idea. Like, can you remember any bass players? I don't know any bass players." And I got like mad at her, right?
So your mom actually was the one who said to you should play bass?
Well, that was the first inkling of the suggestion, and I was like surprised that I never thought about it. So I got defensive. But then eventually, I found my guitar teacher, I would hear his music, and he was playing bass on his music, and all of these styles of music, right? All these Latin styles. And also, side note, I also got into electronic music and neo soul, and those are huge prominent bass lines, right? Like bass is very important and all that kind of stuff. So we brought like a little tiny electric bass, like a Squire bass for me to just test out and have some fun with. And so eventually I got into it, and I wanted to join the jazz band because I really wanted to go to Berkeley. Like I wanted to go to Berkley College of Music to be a producer, like a music producer. Like I wanted to make beats. I released my first commercial work when I was 16 years old, which is like house music. And I was super into like also like checking out, electronic music. I wanted to be a DJ. So I had this goal of going to.
Let me interrupt you just 2 seconds. When you say house music, like, were you like doing masters at work?
Absolutely. Basic channel, like German techno, disco, So that was my motive. That was like the main thing with all of this background. That was like, okay, so I'm going to go to college. I'm going to do that. And I want to get into Berkeley. And then that time at Berkeley, you still had to play an instrument to get in. I don't think you do it anymore. I don't think you need to play an instrument to get into Berkeley.
Oh, wow.
But at that time, you had to play an instrument, and you had to be pretty good.
Was that Boston or California?
Boston, Berkley College of Music. Yeah. So I would get up for 0 period jazz band 3 days out of the week. I hated getting up that early. And the band at my high school was not good. Like it was definitely not something that was motivated. But I'm like, I just got to stick it out. I really want to go to Berkeley, so I have to do this. So I did it. And I got in because I could play decently enough to get in. But making music on the computer was my main focus. Then when I got to Berkeley, everybody needed bass players, and I was playing all the time whether I liked it or not, because I lived in this dorm on 270 Commonwealth Ave, and we would have jam sessions all day every day, and especially like way into the night, like sometimes until like midnight or 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. People would just play and play and play and play and play all day, and people always needed a bass player. Then I was back. Basically the catalyst was I had enrolled in the music production major, but I was back for Thanksgiving break my first year, and I put on these CDs because I also started to like fall in love with jazz again. I did like jazz, but it was not my focus. I started to. I had 2 records. I had Paul Chambers Bass on top, and I had Bill Evans Sunday at the Village Vanguard. And I fell in love with those records. And I heard Paul Chambers play, and I heard Scott LaFaro play. And I looked them up online. I'm like, these guys were probably playing bass since they were 3 years old. And both of them started late in life. Paul Chambers started when he was 16. Scott LaFaro started when he was 18 because he played clarinet first. So I was like, okay, if these guys started off as music at a young age, but then they chose the bass later, and if I practice my ass off, what can I do? In 5 years, what can I do? What can I accomplish if I just devote my entire self to this? Because also this is the time to learn how to play. You can always go back to school to learn how to make music and teach. But I feel like for playing is kind of a motor skill where I think it's harder and harder to learn it as you get older. You know, if like one of the like I'm sure one of the reasons guys have trouble, any bass players have trouble talking to you is because they can't explain what they do. It's so natural to them. They grew up since they were children with the bass in their hand. And so so I was like, okay, I have to get good at this when I'm at this age. And then, whatever happens after that, I don't know. So
let me interrupt you for just 2 seconds. Yeah. I noticed that you very seldom do you meet people who literally give themselves a timeline. Like you said, I'm going to, if I practice and I do this for a period of 5 years, I'm going to get good. Like, answer that question first. Like, how did you come up with that? Because that's very insightful. You don't get that, and then go back into your story.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thanks. I think I wanted to see where it would go, and I had an idea. The more I played and the more I found out about different bass players and the way that they made their career, I had an interest in wanting to do that. But I also was aware that I was starting late, so I would have to catch up a lot. I would have to work harder. I would have to be at people's beck and call, and stuff might take a little longer to happen for me. Whatever that means, right? To feel some kind of sense of fulfillment in whatever you're playing, in a certain gig that I'm playing, and getting to play with such and such, or having being on a record with somebody, doing a tour somewhere, playing a cool gig somewhere. I realized I would have to wait for that. It wouldn't come right away, but I also knew that, okay, if I try at this for years and years and years and nothing happens, then I probably shouldn't. If I'm not enjoying it, then I probably shouldn't have that be my main thing. But I've been very fortunate to where it has been my main thing, and I did fulfill a lot of what I made a goal to do. I'm still there's still some people I would like to play with, of course, and there's still some people in New York that I think if I just work a little bit more at it, I would love to play with them. But I have, if we fast forward a little bit, I have a list on my wall of people I want to play with, and I've checked off a lot of those names. Oh, wow. It's just been because of sideman work, and it's also been because of studying their music, and finally it's because of calling them for gigs. So like if I try to make good with the venue owner. And this is a business hack. If any bass players listening, who's in your band is very important for a gig. And if you can tell the band leader, if you can tell the club owner, oh, I got such and such and such and such, that makes you automatically more appealing. And it's worth the investment. It's worth the investment because they see you as in those circles, right?
Yeah, Paul, let me make this statement first, and Greg, then you ask the question. You are like the king. You're one of the few people that actually, you're almost like you affirm what you want, and then you chase after it. So you're like the affirmation dude. Affirmation bassist. No, I respect it because I do that with a lot of projects I work with. I literally affirm it, and that's where I end up. I always do that. And I have really good family support that actually helps me with that. A really good girlfriend. Awesome. Like, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to do. And I usually say, this is going to happen within a period of this time to this time. And I'd say I have about an 85% track record.
That's
where
awesome, man. So this is like business stuff or just life stuff or
business, life,
is cool?
personal. Yeah, it's
Great.
all it all falls into place when I want that. But that's why when you mentioned it, I was like, this, you're kind of a kindred soul in that sense. I put it out there, I line it up, and then it falls into place, and then I end up there.
Yeah.
So it's really, I'll tell you once we're done with recording how I ended up with DR strings. It was really strange
Awesome.
that happened. Yep. So okay,
Awesome.
Greg, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Let's start with you talked about the two bass albums that you had listened to, and the first quick question is: do you find it ironic that you're listening to the Village Vanguard and now you're playing at the Village Vanguard?
Oh, I actually have never played at the Vanguard.
Come
but I hang out at the Vanguard.
on!
I've never played at the
I was
Vanguard.
leading into that. I was leading it. Well, you should be there. Let's put it that way.
Thank you. One of these days, I think it can happen.
You play with a passion beyond your years. And I don't know if people tell you that. I'm sure they do. You have a very strong sense about how you attack what you play. Because when people play bass and they first get into it, what are passing notes? What are leading notes? How do I find my pocket? I mean, and what I'm hearing from your story is how your journey started out very broad, that you were covering a lot of instruments on the map, and whether it happened through your mother's suggestion or your own instinct, that you focused in on really the main part of making modern music, which is the bass.
Mm-hmm.
And like Anthony says, giving yourself, and like you say, giving yourself a timeline. When did you feel that the pocket was really gelling for you?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, that's what I do. I ask really good questions.
The pocket was really gelling. Well, I would probably say my senior year of college, so my last year. That was probably when I was like, "Oh, okay, this is starting to become something, and I can actually do this, and I can actually, I have a shot at fulfilling what I want." But there have been, I mean, as it all happens for all of us, there's some times where you have a string of successful gigs or a string of successful musical experiences wherever you play, and then you're like, man, and then you get to a point where you're like, man, I realize that this is lacking, or I really need to clean up this, right? And that is a good time often to go take a lesson with somebody who you has what you want, and you're like, okay, I want that thing. How can I get that thing? So now let me such and such about it. So yeah, it goes up and down all the time. I feel like I'm in a great place now. Like I said, there's still stuff I want to achieve, but I think when things started to take off was my senior year of college. When I felt like that upward trajectory, I'm like, oh, okay, now I want to do this, and this is my thing.
Okay, let me ask you this, because you did mention lessons. You were under the tutelage of Ron Carter, Ray Brown, and
John Clayton. So Ray unfortunately was before my time.
Okay.
He passed away when I was about 10 years old, I think.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I was younger. Maybe it was 8. I think it was 2003 or 2004. And I mean, I would have loved to see or have met Ray, but I would like to say I got some of Ray's concept or his approach. I did take a lesson with John Clayton, and I became friendly with John Clayton, who was a protege of Ray. So through that, getting some of Ray's thing, and those are like John Clayton and Jeff Hamilton are the guys in LA. For straight ahead jazz, like they are the people. And so we all, like, anybody who's serious about playing straight ahead, like, goes sees their shows, and it's like a family. It's like we all know each other.
More like a pilgrimage.
Yeah, absolutely. It totally is. It totally is. But the other, I mean, I've had lots of very monumental teachers. I took a great lesson with Rufus Reed about 6 months ago, which that was a lot of my playing.
No.
Rufus is like
round of applause for Rufus Reed.
Yeah, awesome. We love Rufus. Yeah, Rufus.
Yep.
But I gotta say though, I've enjoyed the most important one still has been Ron Carter, because Ron helped me so much, and he was so
Another round of applause for Ron Carter.
Yeah.
yeah, because
We love you, man.
He really he cleaned a lot of my stuff up, and he has been so generous and so nice to me all the time, and I love him. You know, he's like a relative to me. Like I look up to him, I idolize him, and I want to see him soon. And then the first teacher who really whipped me into shape and really like made made an adult out of me, if you would, in many ways, not just musically but also personally, was Ralph Peterson, the great drummer. You know,
Okay.
and I miss Ralph all the time. And Ralph also ignited my one of the other catalysts after I heard those two records was my friend. Like, this is after I've been practicing upright seriously for about a year, and my friend, he's like, "Oh, the bass player didn't show up in my ensemble. It's Ralph's ensemble. Can you come by?" So I came by, and Ralph got on the drums, like, to demonstrate something, and it was just so like Ralph just played unbelievably. Like, I still to this day, I've never been so inspired by somebody sitting down on the drums and playing. And I was playing with him, and I was not good at all at that time, and he made me sound good because of the way that he played. You know? And so yeah, and that's really a secret to a great drummer or bass player, is you make everybody else sound good. You know?
It's connectivity.
A secret. Yeah. So yeah, Ralph and you know, Ralph taught me about how to approach the music, how to think about the music, how to study records, how to, you know, absorb language, how to get in an artistic mindset, what a true artist does, stuff about creativity, how you develop your voice through studying the history and through studying other players and through studying your influences. And yeah, I owe a lot to Ralph too. So
wow,
thank you all.
That's cool. Well, it comes through when you play, because there's a concept called, you know, the sum is greater than the parts. And, you know, the parts are, you're physically there, you're striking your instrument, you're attacking a note, but to put it all together and with an instrument that's generally considered supportive, to turn it into, you know, harmonic and melodic, is a gift.
it is. And I also like the fact that you're kind of like an old soul, dude. And you're at the same time, you're really young, but old soul in a good way, that you have the essence of, like, you're not just this modern guy who kind of scratches the surface and takes a little bit of it and then makes it his own and then claims it to be his. Like, you're not doing the Elvis of bass playing in that sense. And I love that. I mean, obviously, look, that's, you know, besides you being a great personality, because you must be fun to hang out with, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Anthony, I'm going to call that like a black tie approach. He has a very black tie approach to the way the music comes out.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, Anthony and I both play. We both play out. Anthony is quite a character to see, and you should never miss him live, because it's beyond an experience. And me, I'm a, you know, shredder wannabe, hack, classic rock, mojo dude, groover. Awesome. But well, we have fun. We each have fun in what we do. It's what inspires this program. But like, when we hear literally somebody like Will Lyle and you watch the videos, it's not whether I'm not worthy. It's just like I don't know if I could even like put that concept out of, like, you know, literally the old guard of jazz, where there's a lot of standard going on, but there's a lot of strength happening that isn't put out in today's music, and you definitely personify it and push it forward. So
thank you so much.
You bring it on yourself, and it's, you know, there's a lot going on, and hearing your story, it says a lot about how you've achieved it by being focused. Yep. And I think that's the lesson that we're learning here is, you know, you made the conscious movements, but you seize the opportunities. And if I could ask, what happened after you left Berkeley? Were there offers? Are you hunting gigs? Are you writing? Are you teaching? What happens from there? Well, actually, it couldn't be that far, because you're not that old. So what's going on?
Yeah. So that's okay. So when I graduated college, I I thought about moving to New York, but there were still some things that I wanted to get together, and I wanted to be in more situations with older players, and there were so I wanted to go back to LA and freelance, and when I was in college, I would already be going back and doing gigs. I would hit up people and I'd be like, oh, I'm in town, like, can we do a gig? I set up gigs as a leader, and so I moved back, and I kind of was like waiting around a little bit, and my dad suggested, well, why don't you go play on the street? So I tried playing on the street a little bit, and then I started going to jam sessions and meeting musicians that way. And within about a couple months of me being back home,
Yeah, let me comment on
call
that for just 2 seconds. Your parents are effing cool.
Yeah, your parents are good,
Thank you.
man.
Thank you.
Man, seriously, that's
My
awesome.
parents would never tell me to go play on the street unless they didn't want me to come back. Oh, and a quick shout out to my mom. Happy
my mom
birthday.
said go to the street. Yeah. Oh, happy birthday!
Happy birthday, Mom.
That's right.
Happy birthday, Grace.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, if my mom said go play in the street, it's to never come home ever again.
Yeah.
She said play in the street. That's what she said.
Play in the
Like,
Go play in the street.
Go play in
Bring
the
your-
street. Yeah.
Bring your bass with you, but find the really high traffic areas. You don't come back. Sorry to interrupt you, but that I'm impressed by that. I really am.
Thank you. So, yeah, then within a couple months of me coming back, I got a call from my drummer friend. He said, he's an older drummer. He said, and I met him in the jam sessions, and I had hired him for gigs before. And he said, oh, there's this pianist in San Diego who needs bass player. And, we need, there are not enough bass players, so we want to get you in the rotation. So I remember driving down to La Jolla, and there was a spot called Eddie V's, right? And they don't do music there at that location anymore. They still do it in the downtown one. But this pianist named Mikan Zlakovic had the gig there downtown every Monday and La Jolla every Tuesday. And Mikan is like a fantastic jazz pianist, like really amazing. He did a lot of gigs with the saxophone player Charles McPherson. He did tours with Azar Lawrence, one of McCoy Tyner's saxophone players.
Oh,
and
wow.
he's like he knows a ton of tunes, and he's a local legend, and everyone had said like he's
Actually
like the
saw
best,
McCoy
right?
Tyner.
So,
With,
oh really? Oh, awesome.
with Avery Sharp on bass. It was
I love Avery
a
Sharp.
mind-numbing, life-altering experience. He has the biggest hands and there's just the smoothest attack, and he don't talk much. And it was just like the bass does the talking. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. It was just like the size of the room that each of us are in. I saw McCoy Tyner was like Ed McKell's when it was open. That was like forget it. So all right,
super cool.
San Diego, what happened?
Yeah, so Mikan was one of those pianists that he just starts playing. So you have to figure out the song by ear. If he doesn't call the song, he doesn't tell you the key, he just starts playing, and you have to jump in there and get it. So I went through that every Monday, alternating every Monday and Tuesday for about 4 years until the pandemic, right? So I got a lot of my listening chops and my knowledge of repertoire. I got a lot of it from him.
Did you find that it was an alternative that they never taught you at Berkeley?
Yeah, they didn't teach. I mean, they have ear training class at Berkeley.
No, that's not ear training. That's
not the same.
That's don't pee in your pants training.
That's not the same at all.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. So and that the other thing about Mikan is he would have this tune. He'd play it super slick. He'd have arrangements and hits in there, and then the second chorus, when the tune came around again, he'd put different changes in it.
That's
so
jazz, bro.
I heard your changes, and now you're doing other changes, and it's like so you were constantly and by the end of the gig, you'd just be
that's
out.
upgrading,
The
man.
whole gig was like that.
That's how it's done.
Did you enjoy that? Did you enjoy that part of it?
Oh yeah. I mean, I love that getting your ass kicked feeling. Like I sometimes crave that. Like sometimes I'm in gigs where I'm like, okay, I'm doing the gig, everything's cool, everything's right. But it's like when that happens to me and I feel like I'm on the seat of my pants and it's like you're hanging by a thread and I'm like, oh, I'm excited now. Now I want to do a good job.
It sounds like the combat force of music.
Until you try it and they look at you funny.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but
what'd you say there, Anthony?
It sounds like the combat sports of music, like a sparring session where you're. I mean, I don't know if you know anything about combat sports, but I'm a martial artist. So you get a guy who comes in who's unpredictable and says, "Hey, I want to fight you." So you have your style, he has his style, and then at some point you got to figure out, you got to kind of anticipate his next move, so that
Yeah.
you don't get hurt. Now of course in music, you're not going to get physically hurt by the
Yeah. Right.
unless
Right.
someone hits you with your upright bass, you're not going to get physically
Yeah.
hurt. But the
Yeah.
idea that that you're in the position with this guy, it's obviously going to enhance your playing style like that, because
Yeah. Exactly.
you're forced to literally listen and work at the same time. You're
Mhm.
enjoying the challenge. I mean, I'm impressed.
Well,
Mm.
it's like
Thank
a
you.
live bebop thing. You're not
Totally.
you're not figuring out prehand how to make the shifts, the changes, the corners and the turns, and because of pure imagination, it's all creating its own ocean of vibe, as we would call
Yeah,
it.
definitely. And there are certain piano players in New York that still operate like that. I know
Mhm.
Harold Mabern was like that a lot, and the great pianist Johnny O'Neill is like that. Like he'll just start playing and not telling you. So it's kind of an old school. That's an old school
Yes,
thing.
it is.
Yeah.
It's a losing. It's not happening as much.
It's a losing battle.
Yeah, it is a losing battle. But you know
Right.
what though? It's at the same time though, it's what makes the audience appreciate the talent. You're not just running through the motions. You're
Mm.
growing, with the audience, and everybody likes to see that.
Well, what I like about that is it maintains the old. You know the term shedding. I'm sure
Yeah.
you're familiar with that. So back in the day, church guys still use it to this very day. So back in the day, it was all about going into the shed. So if someone brought up the idea that I could outshed you, or it was all about, let me go back into the shed and practice. So you were literally shedding in the shed of wherever you lived, and then you'd go out Friday night and you would tear shit apart.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
the goal behind it. The church guys still do that to this very day. Actually,
Yeah,
they
definitely.
still carry on that tradition. I wish we would do more of that in rock and disco and funk, but then again, the music wouldn't. I guess the music doesn't allow for lots of shedding.
It's your audience,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
it is the audience.
Yeah, that's true. That's
I mean, if that were the case, we would be listening to Will Lyle on tambras and maracas and Dominican instruments, but
right.
it didn't happen that way. He got he ends up being broad by being focused, and he collaborates, and it's just a great thing to see. Just watching your videos, and I suggest everybody watch him on YouTube and listen to his stories on Instagram, because you get you certainly get the firsthand inside track on what it's like being a modern musician. And we talk to a lot of players that I'm going to say mine and Anthony's age, sometimes a little older, but not so much younger. And I
think you might be our youngest guy. You and
really, wow.
Yeah, you and I think Yuka Tadano was pretty young.
Yes,
so I think that you're probably. Yeah, you're definitely one of the youngest guys. I want more of you, by the way.
Oh man, thank you, man.
Wait, let me ask you this too. Your parents were playing classical music in the house, but somehow you got involved in electronic and house music, which I tell you honestly, I hated house music when I was younger. And then a friend of mine took me to Club Cheetah in Newark, New Jersey, and I fell in love with it. Because I like to dance as well. So I was a big house. I became a big house head and started going to these house clubs, and then I fell in love with electronic music. Well, that was more 80s alternative, which led to the electronic music later. But how did you get exposed to that? Because you said your parents were listening to classical in the house, and then you have these cool ass parents who were like, "Why don't you go play bass in the street?
Go play bass in the street."
Yeah.
How are you exposed to that? Yes.
So good question. So my uncle on my mom's side was super into electronic music, is still into electronic music, and he also showed me a lot of deep house stuff and a lot of different kinds of DJs and stuff. Like there's a DJ named Sasha. There was a DJ named there was Deadmau5, of course. There was Daft Punk, of course.
No Daft Punk.
Like all those, and so from that, I pursued that some more, and I became interested in that, and I took what he ran, and then a lot of it was through my own volition. Like I discovered drum and bass and dubstep pretty much on my own.
Love
So,
dubstep rhythm bass. Nice.
but he kind of initiated me into that
Mhm.
electronic music thing. So
Oh,
yeah.
cool, man. That's
Mhm.
actually that's very seldom you get people who have there's much as much variety. Like we're kind of, I hate to say it, we live in a society of McDonald's or Burger King, Republican or Democrat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I find that I always grew up. I grew up in a very mixed neighborhood. Grew up in the
Oh,
suburbs. I always had the gift of having all options. So I would always tell people I don't need to choose one or the other. I can
exactly.
I can do whatever I want for the most part. So one guy said to me, "I'm musically confused." I go, "No, you're musically confused. I'm not musically confused. I know what I like it at the moment." But
Yeah.
that also helped influence my playing. So how do you think that influenced your playing as well? Because obviously you're much more of a jazz guy, but I'm
Mhm.
sure you can throw it down in the funk and the R&B if you had to as
Oh
well.
yeah. Yes. Well, so a couple different sides of that. So my guitar teacher, going back to Gabe, he was also into funk and slap bass. So a lot of that fascination came from him, and I heard that, and it was natural. I really liked it. My dad listened to this band called Talking Heads, which is very percussion heavy
Oh, dude,
and
come on,
very
Talking
bass.
Heads.
Yeah, you know.
Come on,
So of
Tina
course, I don't
Weymouth.
have to say. You guys don't have to
Tina,
say.
Tina, we love
Yeah,
you.
Yeah.
yeah. So so that kind of groove and that kind of idea of the beat and that kind of idea of having dance like be the basis of what you do, like the dancing element, that kind of and that kind of spirit, I think that transferred over later, and a lot of some jazz people have the reputation of being strict, or we only like bebop from the 1950s, but there more than you would expect. There are a lot of jazz musicians who seriously love and play great R&B,
Mm,
and they grew up working in R&B bands too.
mm.
And
Hmm.
so I think there's much more connectivity to that than has been documented, obviously, right? Because
Really?
it's all
Okay.
coming from the
Well,
same
we
it's all
talk
coming
to
from the
them,
same
we see
tradition.
them. I mean, it's
Yeah.
and a lot of it has to do with the gig. The gig is you're either upright or electric,
Right, right,
unfortunately,
right.
and it's pretty rare that you see the two intermingle.
Yeah,
Ironically, I
yeah.
did see it intermingle with McCoy Tyner, but the electric didn't last that long,
Oh,
and
interesting.
people tell me you saw Avery Sharp play an electric bass. I said, yeah. They said he never played an electric bass. I'm like, yeah, he had one. It was
Yeah,
beautiful,
yeah,
4-string
yeah.
custom. Played it for 2 songs in a 3-hour set, and
Hmm.
and he went right back to the upright where he was obviously more comfortable. And you can see that
Hmm.
somebody had put an electric in his hand after the fact, but it was just the two avenues of communication tend to be different. So
Yeah.
unless it's a rockabilly, but that really goes into deep jazz. So
So I'd like to throw in a quote from the great drummer Roy McCurdy, and he's the original drummer on Mercy Mercy Mercy, but his main
okay,
reputation is for being
Mm.
a super swinging straight ahead drummer, right? And he tells his students, you got to do the boogaloo, like he tells his drum. He's over 80 years old. I think he's 85, and he even tells his students, it's like, yeah, you got to play it all, play it all, and
Mm.
take a little bit from here, take a little bit from there. So yeah, and I love doing it. I love
But that
doing it.
also makes you a more hireable player. If
Oh
you
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
the more variety you have,
Hmm.
more chances you're going to get hired. It's interesting. Chuck Rainey was at the Victor Wooten base camp, and he
Oh,
was
awesome.
yeah. It was. Can I tell you something? When they first introduced him and they played Peg from Steely Dan,
Oh,
it brought chills to me because now I hear it differently now. Just the way they introduced him,
wow.
and they're walking because he's 81 now, so New York's the cane. So they're walking him on stage, and you got the and they're just kind of walking over. I literally got chills, and just hearing
Wow.
him tell his story about the just the idea of being the working musician. And there's one thing
Mhm.
he said he didn't like working with Aretha Franklin because she didn't pay well. He said, yeah, he said, but you're putting your name on an Aretha Franklin record, therefore you get more jobs, and then you can
Oh
get more
yeah,
money. Yeah.
absolutely,
He's like,
absolutely.
he's like, you got to think in terms of you can't walk in and think in terms of, oh well, your ego says you want more money, or actually he goes, in this case my wife would say you need more money, but he's not thinking in the long term where it's like, well, let me get this job with Aretha Franklin now. The record label's going to push her, therefore the record will become popular. His name is on the record, therefore he gets hired and gets paid more.
Absolutely.
Hey, Will, can you talk about being a transplanted New Yorker and the bass scene that's going on around here? We interview, I mean, regardless of how it happens, we interview a lot of New York bass players, and Anthony and I had the fantastic luxury of getting down to a little bass meet and greet 2 weeks ago down in the Village, and we met some just fantastic people. We're getting on the show, and big shout out to Tony Senatori who invited us. And what I came away with is, Tony, love you, dude. As New York City seems to be the bass universe for the East Coast, that you have, believe it or not, hundreds of places that have live music. You've got theaters, you've got bars, you've got, larger hotels, you've got private events, you've got all kinds of things that, do you notice an abundance of opportunity as opposed to living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think New York is still one of the only cities in the world where, you can move here and you can play music full time pretty much. Like I do know like a lot. I do know a lot of people, a lot of musicians who are on the jazz scene where music is their main thing, and they might teach a little bit, or they just play full time. They don't teach at all. But the thing about it is, with the way that the city is set up, for better or for worse, the gigs, in my experience, don't pay as much as the West Coast usually. Like, I feel like the gigs in the West Coast did pay a little bit better, but New York has an abundance of gigs, right? So you can do 2 or 3 gigs a day, and all of a sudden it's like the same amount of money. So there's that, and there's also different tiers of gigs, and you might think. I don't want to mention names because I don't want to tarnish any reputations here, but you might have an idea of somebody as being this A-list player, this genius player, right? Oh, who's on such and such record or such and such tour.
But playing everywhere.
But you'll see them doing a gig at a restaurant just like you, or a gig at a club just like you. And
100%.
Needs money.
Well, what we had heard, what we hear is you don't say no. The no better be because you are already playing, not I don't want to work with you. No, exactly. If you're available, you don't say no.
Well, if you say no, and it's not because you're already playing, your phone stops ringing.
Yes, that's true.
Your phone stops ringing. You literally get crickets.
Or as Will's mom would say, you're in the street.
You're in the street.
Well, it is kind of an interesting thing. Like, I'll give you an example of that, right? So I was playing like a small gig at a bar for a while, and I met a friend that was about to move to a friend of a friend who was about to move to New York, right? Guitar player. And I told him, hey, man, if you're ever free for this gig, it doesn't pay that much, but it's super fun, and I always get good people, and we get great tips and blah 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 blah. And his response was, I don't think I want to do that. I don't really play those kind of venues. And this is not like a guy who's like famous or touring or anything. He just gave me an answer like that. And since then, I'm like, okay, I'm never calling you again.
Yeah, never calling you again.
The thing about New York is that if you burn like the old cats, even the top, I feel like even the top echelon, I come to them calling them for a gig. They always treat me with respect. Well, thank you so much for the gig. I'm not available. Would love to do it again. It doesn't matter if it's, and I don't want to mention names for that either. But people who you think, oh, this guy will never get back to me, they get back to you, and they're very respectful.
Yeah,
express interest in money because they don't know when the next gig is going to come from.
Exactly.
And also the fact that you are the new generation, so they're kind of rely on that in that sense. So I think that's a big plus. That you're the young generation. A lot of these old school cats are going to rely on guys like you, especially if you're talented and you can play. That makes a big difference.
The other thing I'm learning is that there's a lot of players that are high-end players, but like because of the genre and the names are only really known between musicians, that the general public doesn't know who they are or where they're even playing. But if you find them on Facebook, you see they know a lot of people you know. And, there's just in the late 80s, I had heard this record from Kevin Eubanks, and just the drummer was off the chart. And now I know he's in Manhattan. Now I know he's playing at these places. Now I know he's playing with people I just met. And I'm like, this guy's incredible. And he's just, I'll say his name, Tommy Campbell. Do you ever listen?
I love Tommy. Yeah,
dude,
awesome.
How can you not love what this guy expresses on drums? It goes way beyond his name and his personality. I don't know his personality. I just know him as a drummer, and he seems like a relatively social person. But when he hits it, it's like masterclass all over again.
Oh, totally.
And the thing was, in the last 3 days, I saw him playing with the guy who was playing at the dinner we went down in the Village, and now they're at the same table eating dinner, playing the gig, and I'm like, wait a second, of course you know him. How do you not know him? Of course. And it's just, since we started this program, our expansion of bass players in my case is become literally exponential. That a third of my friends on Facebook now are just bass players. It goes, you have 62 common friends. I want to know you. You have 86 common friends. I want to know you. I want to know you. I don't care if you don't speak English. I want to know you. I want to know you. And it's just,
all right, guys. I gotta interrupt you and cut this short.
Okay.
So, Marvin, I want you to, not Marvin, I'm being the Marvin Smitty Smith story. I want you to tell this story about the Marvin Smitty Smith where you were talking about on your channel, and then I got to end it in a couple of minutes. So I want you to tell the story about that. Then I want you to talk about what you would tell an up-and-coming bass player, up-and-coming musician in reference to just making it happen. Look, your affirmations. I love the fact that you affirm. That's one thing that I would probably say, because you're making a living at this. You're a working bass player. You have a great attitude. The old school guys are coming to you because you're cool to deal with. So I think that goes a long way. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
I think you're beyond nice. I think that you're. I would actually go out with you, just chill out and talk shit all day.
Yeah, man, let's do it. Let's hang.
Ask me for a date, dude.
Yeah.
No, let's go to Smalls, man.
I would want to go to a house music club with you as well, and just listen to Vega or Frankie. No, Frankie.
Oh yeah.
But I would just chill.
Well, before we end, I just want to tell you we're gonna get in touch with you. We've been issuing these Case for Bass lucky keychains. We put a QR code of your interview on
man.
it. Yep. And
awesome.
They also double as beer poppers. And as I am the road tester manufacturer of these things, and we just want to keep getting the word out. And we're going to issue you the Elite Black 1/4-inch thick acrylic keychain.
Yep. Just send your address.
It's an honor and a pleasure, and we just we're going to hear one more story about Smitty, and but we just in general we're really happy you came on, and you're not just a video or a meme clip on my phone. Yep. You're a real dude that we think bass players would want to attract to and learn on how to do it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much, Greg and Anthony. Okay, so I'll tell the story really quick. So my trajectory of the career didn't stop with Mekon in San Diego. So from him in that situation, I got a chance to play with Roy McCurdy. I got a chance to play with Ralph Peterson. I got a chance to play with Smitty. I got a chance to play with Billy Kilson. I got Pasquale Grasso, Ralph Moore, lots of people. So Smitty was one of those people. I bought a record, before I moved back to LA, I was interning at a studio and I went to the old Amoeba Records and I bought a record that was Mulger Miller record called Keys to the City. Because I found out about Mulger's death on Facebook. He died in 2014 and I didn't know who he was. So I'm like, okay, everybody's talking about him. I have to know who this person is. So I bought the album and Smitty was on the album. It was Smitty and Ira Coleman. It was a trio. About a year after I graduated, I got a call. I got my first call to play ever with Smitty, with this guitar player named Jacques Lacheur. And we played this gig at this spot called the Parker Room, right? And Eric Revis from Branford Marsalis's band, he was the guy that usually was on the gig. But I was subbing, in theory, I was subbing for Eric, right? So I get to the gig and we play the first tune of the night, and it's called Contemplation. It's off the Real McCoy. It's a McCoy Tyner album. And Smitty just takes no prisoners, plays incredible drums. The sound fills the room, and it's huge. The sound is massive. It's not loud like you would say a drummer is loud, but just the sound is just
thick,
like thick, and it's kind of all encompassing. It frames the whole band. So at that time, my left hand, my right hand were still kind of developing, and I definitely hadn't studied with Ron yet or any, bass players on that echelon. So I was fighting, and I'm like, and there was a bass player, a great bass player who I can't name his name, who told me, he's like, yeah, when the drummer does that, just turn your amp up, doesn't matter. So I did that, and Smitty didn't like that, and he kind of told me during the song to turn down, so I turned the amp down, and then in the set, we took a break for the set. He's like, come on, man, let's go outside. He's like, when you turn the amp like that, when you turn it up just because you want to turn it up, that you're killing the music. You're forcing, and you should be where my bass drum is. You shouldn't be louder than that. The sound should be in your hands. You should not be turning the amp loud to play acoustic jazz. So I was like, okay, Mr. Smith, no problem. So I turned the amp down, and the rest of the gig went okay. And it wasn't in my video, I said, oh, he started hiring me for gigs. Well, that didn't happen until later because I had to keep showing up and proving myself. Sure. I think he realized oh, okay, I could tell this kid stuff. He isn't going to push back. He isn't going to let his ego get in the way. And so, and I kept playing, kept trying to improve. And he gave me so many great things. And he's the only drummer I've ever played with that corrected me on chord changes because he has perfect pitch. So if I didn't know a song, if I could play a couple wrong notes, he'd be like F7, D minor, and I'd be like,
he would yell that out. Just
the drummer's giving you theory parts.
Yeah, and I was like, oh
sick.
God, why don't I know this song?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that was great, and he is just an incredible player and person. He really warmed up to me, and we have a great relationship now. And he hired me for his stuff a little bit, and we played in many configurations with different people over the years since that episode. So yeah, that's the Smitty story, and I love Smitty. I hope I get to see it. And he's on my record. He's on my first record, by the way. If anyone wants to check out my music,
nice. Yes,
it's called LA Source Code.
I have a new respect for you, and I'll be calling you Mr. Will.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's
Mr.
So
Will Lyle.
Thank you. So he's on 4 tracks of that album, and I remember, Anthony, you wanted me to talk about what to tell an up and coming bass player, right?
Bass player, musicians across the board, yes.
Okay. Oh, musicians. Okay. Well, I would the main piece of advice is to remember what's important to you, and to realize that what's important to you might not be what's important to other people, but you have to remember what's important to you, and you can't lose sight of that. And you have to make sure that you're taking steps in your music to go towards what's important to you. And whether or not you have to get a job, whether or not you have to work a certain thing you don't like, whether or not you have to say yes to X and YZ gig, or teach X and YZ person, or do whatever, you can't lose sight of what's important and what actually means something to you, because everybody creates meaning out of their own life. Mm-hmm. My meaning for life is not going to be the same as your meaning. Playing jazz with people that I want to play with and people that I look up to, that carries immense significance and meaning for me. It doesn't carry immense significance and meaning to my relatives. They love me. They love that I'm doing what I love, and they're supportive. But if I told them, Mom, I got a gig tomorrow playing with I'm playing with Joey Calderazzo in Branford's band. Like that wouldn't have any significance to them, but it has significance to me. So don't lose sight of what's important to you. It doesn't matter what you have to do to survive. Just don't lose sight of what's important to you. And finally, once you identify what it is, you have to now take the steps to get there and to be the best player that you can be. Just try to be in as many situations as you can and do your best to find out your weak points, your blind spots, and get better at them. And then finally, when somebody has a quality in their playing that you really love, do your best to be around them. Go listen to them play and try to get a lesson with them. If they refuse a lesson, fine, because that's happened to me too. People told me, "Will, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry." But I'll still go out and try to hear their show, and yeah, just learn as much as possible, and have that creative spirit. Don't when you get into the road, when you do end up playing a lot, you start to get in this rote where it becomes like you're going through the motions. But don't lose that lyrical, beautiful side. That side is always accessible in every moment, and you have to entertain yourself. Your playing has to entertain yourself. You have to like your playing. So don't forget that every moment is a fresh opportunity to play something great. And that's most of what I can say. I don't want to confuse but those kind of words to me, that's what I feel like would help somebody who was in my shoes 10 years ago or whatever. That's stuff what I would tell myself 10 years ago.
I just went to church. That's all I know.
Okay. Yes.
I went to
Will Lyle, Will bass player. Berkley
Well,
graduate.
thank you. So wise beyond your years. It was just what a great episode.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much.